Michelin Endurance XT silicone wiper blades are real-world proven for extreme weather performance, lasting 2 times longer than other blades. The new Michelin Endurance XT silicone wiper blades, only available at Walmart. With Joey Taylor, I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is The Herd. So Russell Westbrook and the Oklahoma City, I'm say it just slides off the tongue that he plays for Oklahoma City, right? Russell Westbrook and the Houston Rockets go into Golden State in the new arena, the Chase Center, and dominate the Warriors, the Santa Cruz Warriors, actually, right? There's so many G Leaguers on this roster. So they're up 35 in the fourth quarter, and you do wonder, like, why is he in the game in the fourth quarter? He starts talking trash and getting back and forth with the bench, and he gets his second tee of the game. He gets ejected. And you're like, Russell being Russell. Russell Westbrook, after the game, was really insightful, talked to the media, and had this to say.
I just got to control myself. That's it, control myself. In a sense of where, but I'm not backing down. I wasn't raised that way, so I don't back down to nobody. I fear nobody but God. That's it. But I got to do a better job of holding myself accountable to a very, very high standard, and I'll make sure I leave no room for error to allow somebody and people to paint me out to be a guy that I'm not. I just think it's unfair though, that after all that, I'm the only one that get attacked or kicked out. That's not fair. I don't care what nobody says. There's so many other people involved in it that was doing so many things that weren't okay. But I'm the one that gets attacked, gets ejected, and then everybody else is cool and go back to play. But like I said, I take responsibility for that, and I hold myself to a very high standard, which I'm withhold.
Look, I get it. You know, Russell Westbrook's like, why am I getting a tee? Why do you need to give a tee when, you know, the game's a blowout? It's actually over. You got dudes taking the ball snatching the ball out of my hands. Like, everybody else is trying to act like a tough guy, and I'm the guy who gets the technical foul. I understand that, like, sometimes you get this reputation established. You're like, well, that's not really fair. Okay. Like, life is not fair. Life's not fair. No one owes you anything. Start your day with those two and get about your day. I do think, though, this underscores the biggest thing that could be haunting the Rockets. Is that while I like, and I explained last time I was hosting, I like the idea of, hey, if we don't have a big man that fits how we want to play. And Clint Capella was good as a pick-and-roll big guy. But Chris Paul is no longer their other point guard. And James Harden can play without that pick-and-roll option. Like, let's spread out around Russell Westbrook. Let him drive, let him create, and do the same around James Harden. And play kind of analytic style, both offense and defense, switch every screen, make guys make shots over the top, and make more threes and layups than they make twos. And while I get all of that, this is like so many theories. It takes out the human element, right? Because the human element is, it's the real reason communism didn't work. Right? The idea of us all pulling together, banding together, and building something great. And Joy goes about her job, and I go about my job, and we have great pride in our jobs and and the place in which we live. Like, that's cool, but the human element's like, somebody wants to be in charge. People know that they're better than other people. They want to be rewarded for their work, which is more strenuous or more well-regarded, or, you know, you can make more money off of it. The human element makes it pretty much impossible to have everyone making the exact same amount of money and getting the exact same benefits. Again, in theory, great. In practice, not so much. In theory, Russell Westbrook, not shooting threes, driving in, getting the rim, nobody there, able to shoot mid-range shots, everybody else shoots threes. In theory, great. But Russell Westbrook can be rattled. He has a reputation that precedes him, fair or unfair. He does have a reputation of being a bit of a hothead, right? I remember last time they were in the playoffs in Oklahoma City with the dude with the cell phone in Utah, right? He has a tendency to lose his mind, yelling things at guys in the crowd. Like, that's not what you got to be doing here. I mean, you factor in the human element. Should James Harden compete more defensively in the playoffs? He should. This is important to me. He doesn't. You know, you're trying to make a great playoff team out of a team that's coached by a guy who can't win big in the playoffs. And a best player in James Harden, who's a great talent, but can't win big in the playoffs. And Russell Westbrook, when things go bad, he goes his default button. Everybody has a default. Right? When you go back to his default is, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. Remember the last game he played with Paul George in the playoffs in that Utah series? Was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago? Took 41 shots? Yikes. Took 19 threes? Well, he made 7. Dude, Russell Westbrook on no planet should be shooting 19 threes. So I just, as much as I like what Houston's trying to do, trying to go purely small ball, everybody has a small ball lineup. They're like, why do a small ball lineup? We'll just do a small ball team. It's not a crazy idea. It takes out the human element. And the human element gives us Russell, who it's me against the world. Gives us James Harden, who just can't seem to buy in at the defensive end. Gives us Mike D'Antoni, who can't figure out how to get his team to play a little bit differently, a little bit better in the playoffs year after year. I like the Rockets, Joy. I want to buy into this could work, and it might work in one upset of a series. I just don't think it works in the long haul in terms of, like you said, are you playing for a championship?
Well, I don't think they're championship level right now, but I didn't think going into this year that this was the year for them. I think there's going to be a lot of changes to the way that the Rockets are set up next year.
No question. No question. And I guess, and that's hard to play with, right? When you have a new owner, and really they're still stinging from the 27 consecutive missed threes, right? The home playoff Game 7 loss to the Golden State Warriors, that to them is their Marshawn Lynch didn't get the ball.
It was a disaster. They should have won that game.
Yes. Now they didn't have Chris Paul, right? And the Warriors didn't have Andre Iguodala, but they did have home court, and they should have won that game, but they didn't, and they can't seem to get over it. And they just keep trying to fix things. They're the guy who has they got a nice house, and like, yeah, but what if we put a waterfall in the backyard? You're like, yeah, but the house is nice. You already have a pool. Like, nah, let's do it. And then you go and like, the waterfall doesn't fit the motif for the rest of the house. Okay, let's take the waterfall out. Let's put a water slide in. Huh? You're like, the house was fine. They were fine. And then, they lost Ariza, and, they spent a bunch of money on Capella, and then they traded for Chris Paul. And they had proceeded that to trade for Chris Paul. They had all the ramifications of that. And they gave Chris Paul the extension, which they kind of got goaded into. They didn't really want to, but they did. Like, there was a bunch. They had a cool house. They tried to add to it, and they made it worse.
I like the Rockets. They're fun to watch. I just don't think that they are championship ready this year.
So how many teams are championship ready in the West? Just 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the East, how many?
Well, I think there's some more in the East.
I do think there's more in the East, although the Bucks keep dominating. Like last night, they look good. They're
a great team.
Because they know exactly who they are, right? I think that's the challenge to the Clippers. I think the Clippers have more options for creating offense.
They have more depth.
And they have more depth than the Lakers. But at least the Lakers know who they are.
I think the Clippers have a good chemistry this year.
Yes, but do they know? Look, Lou Williams is going to try and do what he does, right?
But I think that the Clippers are playing for the postseason.
Yes, no question. But
which isn't fun.
Right.
Which isn't, it's not sexy for fans. They're not like I enjoy watching the Clippers, but to me, they're playing for the postseason, and I'm okay with that. And if I'm a Clippers fan, I'm okay with that.
Yes, but that goes counter to how they played last year. We talked about Brooklyn's culture changing. The Clippers' culture has changed somewhat in that last year it felt like they were going to fight you for every single game.
No, it's a completely different approach.
And I agree with you. And that was their plan coming into the year, which is like, hey, let's just keep getting better and better and better and better and be ready for the postseason. I'm just saying that's a departure from what made this kind of a cool team to watch, and probably, what enticed Kawhi Leonard to want to come there and want to help, get that trade for Paul George. So I do think it's interesting that we both agree what they're playing for is not how they were playing last year. All right, coming up next, huge fight this weekend. We'll cover that. Joy will make her pick, so Vegas's lines will completely shift. But coming up next, I think the Cowboys should make a major move. How big? You'll find out next in The Herd.